Oh, we should, I think hope there'd be at least two parties, I mean, but I don't know.
That's why I was looking for the waiver.
For the whole harmless
The whole
indemnification.
harmless, yes.
They are required under the agreement, we can look at that also, to provide insurance, comprehensive liability insurance to cover the district. And I can relook at that if the board wishes also, as far as the amount, because the original amount just says, amounts determined by the district manager within normal business practices. And typically, my other districts usually require a minimum of $1 million, sometimes $2 or $3 million comprehensive liability coverage.
Mr. Banks, I'll ask you before I'll come back to you. Mr. Banks, did you have any comments?
Yeah, I have a couple, the first one is clarification. So, present for voting, is that sitting on site or am I allowed to vote?
I assume the board made a motion to allow you to fully participate in the meeting, finding exceptional circumstances. If they haven't, the board can do that now if they wish, then you can fully vote.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to allow Mr. Banks to fully participate in the meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
With a finding of exceptional circumstances included in that motion.
Yes, with
Thank
the
you.
finding of exceptional circumstances.
Thank you.
Go
Okay,
ahead.
great, thanks. So the second point of clarification, Tony, can you remind me and the board and everyone present, with the Florida statute that Lee County has adopted, I believe there are specifications on what is considered non-permittable parking on the roads, and I think it's in front of fire hydrants. Are you in a position where you can clarify those as existing today?
Well, I think the Florida statutes outlines areas of no parking. One, generally, that's under the traffic code. Yeah, well, in certain distances of intersections and driveways and all, there are a whole list. I think Mrs. Flaherty at one time had the whole list.
I have
if
little
I'm not mistaken.
corners
Yeah.
and.
Yeah, and as well as, there's a separate statute that was referenced a while back about blocking or obstructing travel lanes in roadways. But yes, that's in the Florida statutes.
Okay, all right. So that's defined. My position is apprehensive about approving a policy without the stipulations being defined by Senator HOA on what infractions or obstructions would constitute towing. To me, that's kind of putting the cart before the horse. It's like starting the game and defining what the rules are going to be or how you're going to keep score as you start playing. So for me, what I would like to see before I would even consider a vote to approve would be for the HOA to come back with very definitive parameters around what their towing policy would include. Because I think for us to approve something without any clarification puts us, one, at risk. And two, I think it also would enable us to have more open dialogue on what that policy is the purpose and intent. And for me, the only other area that I think is gray is when we talk about obstruction. What does that truly constitute? And if it is open for interpretation, I think we need to at least put some laws around that. I absolutely believe that you could put some regulations in that are currently aligned with the county, as far as intersections and hydrants and in front of driveways, whatever that is. That's pretty clear. I think I would be okay with that, but I can't approve anything without something more definitive. And I just don't feel comfortable approving something without
Answer that, Nick?
Yeah, Mrs. Flaherty is gonna address something, I think.
Okay, if you weren't here last meeting and the HOA president was here and he explained that he needed the towing policy to be implemented before they could go to their HOA board and get exactly a towing policy, that we had to approve the towing policy for Stony Brook first. Now the HOA will go to their board and make their recommendations and what their criteria is, and when that criteria is finished, it will come back to us again. And that's the policy, but they needed to know that they could have a towing policy, because that's the Florida statutes.
Yeah, I would
And
say, Kathleen, I went back and I watched the video and I heard the whole meeting. I don't necessarily agree with that stance. I don't believe that the Stony Brook, Advisory Committee would have to have a pre-approved policy in order to draft, a policy they would bring back to the board. So I don't think unless Tony can chime in and say, from a legal perspective, that is precedent and that's what we should do. I think that was more of a recommendation, not something that is absolutely needed.
It's kind of what we did when we turned the roads over to the county.
Yeah, I think in this instance, again, when, and I look at it, when the association comes back with the recommended towing policy, it would be a board and district towing policy that would be implemented by them, and that's how I envision that. And again, if it's up to the board if they wanna say, okay, we have these designated zones, we're not gonna do anything until such time as we get that, and if you want to then have the associate, as opposed to this amendment, have the amendment also read that, add some additional language, that before there is any authorization to tow, that the board must adopt a towing policy for Stony Brook, and then the association would come back to the board with the recommendation. That can be added in this amendment also.
Madam Chairman?
Well, along with the hold harmless indemnification and, or looking at the insurance coverage.
I'd like to move that this item be tabled until these questions are answered, come back to us at that time.
I'll second that.
What questions are you?
All
what
the
are-
ones that Mr. Tinkle asked, and all the ones that hasn't a final answer on.
Yeah, and I think I'd like to see, Bob, I am not, I wanna make it clear, I am not against towing, because I think towing is the only way that you've got an enforcement action. But what I'm worried about is how it is implemented, how it's implemented. So I agree with Bill, I'd like to see, have Stony Brook put together their plan of what this is going to look like, bring it back to us where we can approve this whole thing, or review this whole thing, make a decision how to proceed. At the same time, I would like to have Tony check out some of the things I brought up on the legal side of it. Because to me, if there is a way to get around these roads being transferred to Stony Brook, and, that'd solve so many problems, it would be funny.
Is that a second on motion to table?
It was.
I'm just gonna ask, Mr. McCullough, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
Do I have to get up there, or can I just say it here? I'll get up. No, it's-
It'd be
introduce
nice if
yourself.
we had you on the record.
Okay. Joe McCullough, Chairman of the Stony Brook Gateway Advisory Committee, and former board member, not currently one. But Ed, I do have some questions for you. Number one, do you have any idea how wide the roads in that particular community in Polk County are?
The way I understood, they sounded like they were the same as ours. I described ours as 24 feet back-to-back curves of the curves.
With the rain gutters, comes up to 24, otherwise it's 20 in the middle. And there is some question in the past whether or not that's wide enough to truly have legal parking on the road.
That is.
And I know that was a subject that's been tossed around, and I've heard different answers, and people have different opinions, but I thought the final answer was no. Number two, was it a rural community? In other words, did it have individual mailboxes in front of the houses?
Joe, I don't know the answer to that.
I think that it
And then,
it
well, there's
did,
another big one too, do they have sidewalks?
and we only
That
have
makes
on
a
one
big
side.
difference.
Yep. No, and the reason, the significance of the mailbox when you're designated a rural community, the law, state statute specifically states there's a 30-foot setback from parking by those mailboxes. And that runs up to about 6 o'clock and then it goes off. So during the daytime, and this has been a problem, I know Margaret touched upon it, that people sometimes don't get mail.
I don't know, mail has not been a good subject this week with me. We've been downtown to Page Field. A lot of Gateway, now I don't know about Stony Brook, but Gateway Greens, and I was appalled when I heard this. They are not being served by the US Post Office. It's subcontractors. And the US Post Office is not checking them at all. We have about 4 houses in a row over in our neighborhood, and we were ticked off and our mail wasn't getting there.
We've had that problem for a while.
And we've been complaining about it, but we're getting back to the subject.
Does that have to do
Our
with it?
girl, if there looks like there's a car in, I don't want to watch what I say or I'll get in trouble. If there is what appears to be a blockage, that she cannot manipulate her vehicle in there, it's like the little Chinese boy, no ticky, no laundry. You don't get any mail.
And that would be a major.
But I think that's a federal and a state statute, that you cannot block access to the mailbox.
And 30 feet seems excessive even to me, but the fact is, that is the law. So from the perspective, we actually, one of our board members, and he might have been president in the past, Paul Kilmeyer, drove through the community and
So when you
actually
start
tried
taking
to
the 30
assess.
foots, there's no
And
room
looked
left.
at, I think he came up with about a dozen legal parking spots when he got done. So just to put that into perspective.
I understand what you're saying.
And in any case, I don't know what else I could say beyond that. I'm not a hardcore about parking. In fact, on the record, I was, as a board member, looking for some kind of a modified parking restriction. It turned out that I'm not sure we can do it. That's part of the problem. It's all or none, it seemed like.
Well, my problem with this, and the HOA had, is that how do you enforce it? If you don't have towing, we don't have finding, so we can't find. The HOA could do finding, but that, it becomes a absolute, what you're gonna do is go out and have a finding guru that's going around and doing this. What do you got, 30 miles of streets up there?
8.
8 miles of street. Well,
We're nothing like you.
What's that?
We've
But it's a
been-
nightmare.
We've
What do
been
you
told
do?
we can't do finding.
Yeah.
We haven't been told that.
Well,
We
that's
just
because
didn't want
nature
to
of the
select
roads.
to go that route, because how do you do it? How do you do it? Who implements it?
Can we have a vote on?
Yeah, well, you own the roads, right? I mean, and Gateway Greens, you own those roads,
That
Correct.
is true.
That's a different.
Well, oh, that's right, that's the issue you got, is you don't,
That's
again, we're back
correct.
to that same deal.
And part of the problem is that, in my opinion, it's clear cut that parking is not allowed on our roads for many reasons, whether it's setback from the mailboxes, from curbs, from corners, or the width of the road. I don't know what the solution is to modify it to make partial, and parking on half the road, I think there's stories about that not working well in communities.
She told me today.
And,
Well, I'd like.
I wish we could find.
You,
I wouldn't have to
you-
tell-
you
we
bring
wouldn't
up-
have to.
You bring up a good point. We've got plenty of plans and drawings that we can take to show up there on those roads. Are your mailboxes single or doubles? Singles.
They're both.
They're both, mostly
You
double,
And
but
just see
some
what
single.
it looks like. I'd like to see a schematic of what it looks like when you put a red line 30 feet front, 30 feet back of every mailbox. You might end up with not much road left.
Well, our maximum, our biggest lots are probably 75 feet wide, and some are as little as 40, 45 feet on the villas. So, just think about that, put 30 feet each way.
But my point was, I'm not opposed
Yeah, I
to
understand.
the towing. The towing is the only enforcement arm you've got.
I think when it comes down to it, and I know Margaret mentioned this briefly, and that has to do that the towing isn't something our intention is to, as a community, and I'm speaking as a former board member, and this is a different board now, but was not to go around and start towing cars out of the community. It was more to focus on enforcing a no parking policy, because there are people in our community that to this day do not believe there's any restriction to them parking in the road. And
Regardless of the mailbox or whatever.
regardless of any of the thing, they just think they can park anywhere they want, and they try to make a point. And I think, I think some of it was to make a point that you can't sometimes. That's all I can say.
Okay, we have a motion, thank you, Joe. We have a motion on the table to bring this back with additional information. All in favor?
All right.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Aye. Aye. So, need more information, we'll bring it back.
Just for quick information, I went to the Lakeside landings website. It appears all of those are district roads. I looked for deeds from the CDD to the HOA, there is none in the Polk County Clerk's Office. And the law firm that represents that district is the same law firm representing Key Marco that promised them they could come up with a solution to give the roads to the HOA.
Is this at Hopples?
Hopping the Green.
Hopping Green.
It's my understanding they've not been able to do that yet. It might
Well,
talk-
what, the gal talked to one of the sixty-five and older community, those were public roads that had been turned over to the HOA, and I thought, we did that. I'm all ears, I'd love to be able to do it.
I'll try to find out.
They waited for a couple.
So we'll check in on
And
that.
and I do like Ed's idea of, and that's kind of what I was looking for, is if we do, based on schematic, to be able to show, these are areas that, under the current regulations are no parking or called out as, illegal or not permitted. I think that paints a clear picture, and if that ends up being 90% of the community, then so be it, it's in black and white, it's an easier story to tell, to much larger community.
Madam Chairman, it would be appropriate for a couple things on this issue, for the board to give the staff a time frame to come back with, to address some of the factual issues
Well, I
raised today.
think one of the things I think we've got is we're gonna, with the budget public hearing, aren't we going to have to continue that? Am I
Yes.
that understanding?
Yes.
So this is the second month of August. How about the second month, the second meeting of September?
Okay, and then in the meantime, the staff will, the board's direction, and look at it, Chris, and just, go out there and look at the drawings and the measurements and get a good graphic for the board to come back so we see what dimensional issues are with roadways as well as those areas where you can't
And
park.
we
if
can
we
get
need
Danny-
more time, we can extend
If we can
it.
get Danny to give us 4 or 5 aerial photos, say 50 scale of Stony Brook, it ain't gonna take very long to go out there, because if what Joe said is true, sounds like what we're gonna do is when we come back is we're gonna have a lot of red lines.
Mhm.
Now's the time to find that.
Find that out.
That moves us to the establishment of the Pond Maintenance Standards Advisory Committee.
I did listen to this.
Madam Chair, this is,
This is the next item.
and this is an item that was directed by the board. We're gonna establish a ponds committee, or should say reestablish a committee that was put together to pond standards several years back, and work on
PS2,
updating.
that was
Yeah.
PS1.
And look at updating those and bringing in some contemporary issues. And what we have is a resolution to establish the committee. And I want to appoint 4 members to the committee because the board's already appointed the chair, Flavia Walsh.
I'd like to make some changes, Chris.
Okay.
One, I don't think 5 would get it. I'd like to see a minimum of maybe 9, but at least have 7 members on that committee. When we did this before, the problem we ran into was having quorums. You have 5 and you're gonna have quorum problems. Plus that, you've already got more than 5 that are interested, and I wouldn't want to refuse service to anybody.
Well, you've got 8 here at Westlavia, that's 9.
That's what I say,
That's
I'd
perfect.
go to
That's a
9.
perfect
Well,
size.
I moved, sorry.
Huh?
I moved.
And
I wouldn't wanna go out and tell any one of these who have volunteered, that, you're not wanted. It's, the more the merrier.
Mrs. Laird?
Okay, first of all, on the list, there's a Judy Peck, and it's actually Judy Peak.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, so that needs to be corrected. I don't know if all of these people live here full-time. I think that we need to have all people who are committed to full-time, only because what Mr. Tingle just said, to make sure there's a quorum all the time. And I don't know,
I know most of these people, with the exception of Mr. George, Connie overruns here year-round, except for vacations. Chris, Justin's here, Richie's here, Jim Wisniewski's here, Bob Geppert's here, I think Judy's here, and I believe Sally is here, so.
I just,
My thing is that, I just don't wanna go out and, we need to have a cross-section of people, and I don't think you can get a cross-section with 5, I'd like to see 9.
I just wanted to make sure that we didn't have anyone who wasn't here. Most of the time.
I have a comment to make, go ahead, Mr. Guy, I'll make mine last. wanna hear from
I
Claudia.
was hoping, Madam Chairman, that we could hear from Ms. Long.
Yeah, that was, I wanted to hear from her also.
So, Fabio Walsh, and I just wanna update the board, Avery, is no longer interested, I wasn't sure if he was in there, you took it out already, right? I was gonna suggest that, 7 versus 5. And it's kind of what Ed mentioned, it was trying to get everybody from maybe different communities, because we're also different and we get, different ponds and stuff. So I wouldn't be opposed to having 7, and having an addition of the 2 more.
Would you be agreeable to have 9, everyone that's listed on the procedure?
Well, my question would be the quorum. Would it be, because we did have problems trying to have a quorum with that many people.
Well, you can have,
Right.
you can have trouble with the quorum if you have
Sure.
too few or if you have too many. Either
Sure.
one. Or you can just say that the people in attendance make a quorum.
Okay, and is everybody that is eligible that has put in their name to be a
I
member?
have concern about one of them because of the legal notice we had received.
From his
And
attorney
you-
in the past.
Yeah, can you address that? Seems like that would be a conflict of interest.
It's not a conflict, but many times I've seen boards when they appoint members or people, that one issue that's matters taken into consideration is whether or not members of that group or committee have threatened or are engaged in litigation against that governmental body. And typically, the governmental bodies say, those people are going to be appointed, do not appoint them.
That's,
That's not unusual.
this is like taking away a right, and I don't have a problem with that at all.
Go ahead.
When you're finished.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I wanna make sure that it's clear, you had stated that no board, none of us, not any supervisors can be involved in this, so we should not do anything with these, standards, this is correct? Am I
Right.
under the?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking you.
Yeah, so I think that will be the goal, the committee will meet, and anytime that we need to, present anything to the board, I will come in and I'll present it to the board, yeah.
So none of us would be involved. Okay,
And
thank you.
if Claudia's okay with 7, I think 9 is too many. I think that's hard to, manage. I'm fine with 7. So
You're,
can,
you're gonna X out the 2 that you don't want.
the only one I have a concern with is the one that has sent us an attorney's letter. I think that's an issue. And it doesn't matter who that was, I would feel that way.
I make a
Hey,
suggestion.
Martin, another comment when you get a minute.
Yeah, let me let Mrs. Flaherty finish and then I will come to you.
Could we make it 7 with 2 alternates, so that the quorum would need just the 7, for the 7, but the
You
2
mean
alternates?
non-voting?
Yeah, non-voting, and then if if you needed it for a quorum, you can use one of the alternates? Would that be a possibility?
Just pick 9 and do that.
I agree, 9 might.
I think.
I mean, if they're willing to help, I'll take the help, they can collect letters. No, but, I think 7 is a good number.
Thank you.
Mr. Banks?
Yeah, I was gonna say, if, I do believe the more the merrier in this situation, and if there's one that, is to be excluded, I'm sure we could probably find another 9, person, to participate. I think there's enough interest. The other comment I would make is, I would ask that, both staff and a invited board member, be allowed to attend upon invitation. Because what I'd like to see is some of that collaboration take place prior to items coming to the board. So I think that would be formidable, for staff to attend upon invitation to, talk through items. A representative of the board, and we can determine who that individual might be, as it comes forward. But I'm not really crazy about the idea of completely excluding staff and the board from attending select meetings, because I think it'd be a great opportunity to vet some issues out prior to it coming to the board.
And I understand what you're saying, I just think that part of the issue with what had come to the board previously was the interpretation of staff and the board having too much control over the document. So this
And
was
I'm fine
kind
with
of
that.
independent of that.
Yeah, and an alternative may be, if we could just set up, periodic workshops where, the ponds group would come in and provide an update. We can have some roundtable discussion, maybe that is the solution, but I do want there to be some level of collaboration outside of just a standard board meeting, because it'll take up a ton of time, and I think we can resolve those issues outside of the board.
I
So,
understand that.
I'm okay with that, yeah, okay.
What I'd like to do is have a decision on 7 or 9. So I think we need to start there before we adopt this.
7, what's 7?
7.
I think 7 would be.
Do we need a motion for that?
And Margaret, I'm sorry, pardon me, because I'm not in the room. And one point of clarity is, other people that have interest can't attend the committee meeting.
Of course.
Yeah, for the record, they're all public meetings, they will be noticed, they're subject to the sunshine law, and minutes will be provided in file.
Absolutely.
So I don't want anyone to feel like they're excluded. You can absolutely participate. You just say, you won't have a voting, if we go to 7 versus 9. So
Right.
I'm fine either way.
So,
Do you need a
do we
motion?
want a motion for the number, Tony, just to make it official?
Well, I think,
Well, it's
I think,
okay.
I think we get a consensus, and if the board adopts the resolution, they'll adopt it and amend paragraph 1 to provide 7 as opposed to the 5 that's currently in paragraph 1. It's at page 29 of the agenda.
And flip and unflip it.
If you go with 7 and it's approved, are you going to have each of these 8 that are on here come in? I'd like to hear their credentials and their philosophy.
In previous discussions, I thought that the idea was that our committee chairperson would choose the other members of the committee.
But you
And
can
I'm
choose, but then
comfortable with
it had
that.
to be approved here. I wanna make sure that we have a committee that is well-rounded and not one-sided. And then the other one is, I wanna find out what their credentials are. There is no experts on this committee whatsoever in water quality.
My understanding was that
Flavia's been down the road a lot on this, but there is no expert in here. On the other committee, we had some pretty good people on this. A couple of these people I don't know anything about, couple.
I agree with that.
my understanding was that Flavia would go solicit names and have people interested in come back to the board with the names, and that's who's in.
Yeah,
That's
no
what,
problem with
and I
that.
that's
did-
what's here.
Yes,
Yeah.
and the board can take that action.
Yeah, I would like to see some credentials of these people, what their philosophy is on this issue.
And I did send an email out requesting that. I believe only 3 of them responded it, and a few said they weren't gonna do it, and I forwarded only 3 to, all of those, to Chris. So he has.
You know what I'm looking for. I'm looking for somebody that's not coming in here with an agenda.
So I can tell you that my goal, and I think the goal of the
Can hardly keep a
board
straight
is
face.
probably what I was looking at.
That's why I was
Then it'd be
trying
a
to be
committee of 0.
attentive to this.
Now, I have no problem if we go with the 7, but, I wanna make sure.
Would you like to
You
hear
can
who I would like to
vet 'em, but I
recommend?
wanna
Yes.
double vet them.
How-
I just do not want this committee to be a loaded committee with an agenda right off the bat, because I can tell you right now, it's
And I
gonna be a
agree.
waste of time.
Would you like to hear what my recommendation is for the 7?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. Do you need to make any motions for, to change to 7 before I give my recommendation?
I think that's part of,
we
when
go
we
with
pass
7,
the
7, 9.
resolution, it'll be part of that.
So, I would like Bob Gephardt from Pelican. Connie from Gateway Greens. Jim from Silver Lakes. Sally Black from Hampton Park. And Judy Peak from Eagle Point, right, Eagle Point? Yes, Cypress Point.
So one more,
That's 5.
and she's 6, so one more.
One more, and there'll be Tom George from Hampton Park.
I don't know nothing about Tom George.
Because Hampton Park was what was, I had more to pull.
Well, we know what Sally's position is. We know what Sally's position is. I don't know anything about, Mr. George whatsoever.
That's
But
why
it-
we're having a
it-
committee. That's why we're having a committee, Ed.
No, my point is that I don't want a pond standards that is put together by a group that has a philosophy of basically writing what we had in the amended pond standards. I wanna see a diverse group in there discussing this deal, not everybody agreeing of how we're going to do one particular aspect.
That's why we have a strong chairman.
Yeah.
And looking at.
Strong chairman. You got
Yeah,
a
man,
otherwise
it's
strong, committee, I'm totally opposed to that. Put Justin on there and you'll have a leveling.
No,
And the check and balance here is going to be us,
no.
Right, exactly.
so.
Recommendations to the board.
And that's what I thought, I mean, we will be coming up, you know, at the end, the board will make a decision on whatever we present.
Yeah, typically, I mean, quite often you'll see, for example, in committees, you'll have just in another context, say developers, engineers, environmentalists, preservationists, conservationists, and each have a particular area which they have an interest, and they may be tasked with making recommendations on a particular topic.
But we don't have any of that.
No, but I'm just saying, so they already have, quote, a predisposition to an approach without knowing what the actual product will be. And I've served on a number of those committees, and I find quite frankly how phenomenal it is, how they have this good discourse among them, regardless of any preconceived notion or philosophy they come in with, come up and arrive at a consensus. And the board, I think, excellent comment by Mr. Banks, the board can filter through, looking at the minutes and having the presentations as to whether there's any particular bias in the recommendations, and the board can always reject, accept as whole, or modify, whatever recommendations.
And Tony, I would charge too, Claudia as the chair, that this committee not be, not performing in a vacuum. I would expect them to go out and pull in experts, socialize with the community, especially those that had historical issues, consult with, the previous, pond committee group. I mean, that's my expectation of this committee is there's a strong foundation, but part of their responsibility would be to do due diligence wherever that may lie.
And there's plenty of professionals in the community that they can reach out to that are experts in different areas and speak with them or get their opinions on things. I don't see where this is, and Flavia, you speak to this, you're not going at this personally with any bias, you're just wanting.
Yes, and if, and with all honesty, if we wanna look at that route, and if I look at the emails that I receive, I made the right choice for the committee, from who I had chosen to be. And I have partnered already with Ernesto, and I already asked, you know, I think it's important that one of the first meetings that the committee has, I like him to join, so he can give an oversight of, you know, purpose of stormwater, kind of really starting from the beginning. I wanted this to be productive, and I wanted to be educational, and I want the committee to truly understand what they're gonna be looking at it, and the decision is not gonna impact their particular pond, their particular lot. It's, you know, it's an overall general project, and it's something that's not a one-year term, it's, they're on for years.
Are you looking for a motion to approve this with the, 6 names that the chairman has recommended?
Tony, is that part of passing the resolution, or do we pass
I would
this?
say pass the resolution first, with the amendment as to the 7-member board committee, And then I would suggest that the board then have a separate motion to appoint the committee members.
So, Mr. Guy, the resolution is behind tab B3, 4B3. And it would change, on page 2 of that resolution, 5 residents to 7.
Question, are these pond standards going to be for, all of Gateway?
That's my understanding.
These pond standards are gonna be for all of Gateway?
I would imagine unless the committee comes up with a separate recommendation, you know, find something appropriate, and again, they're non-binding
Well, the reason I ask is because the last standard was, Pelican Reserve was dropped from it. This is gonna be a community pond standard, Gateway CDD.
It's up to the committee to make a recommendation and up to the board to consider that.
Yeah.
And we do have, like Dr. Della Vega and other experts and regulatory people that we could bring in if the committee would like to hear from them and discuss it, and also,
We had Ed Hansen, it's here in the community, that this is his background.
And that's another person that, you know, I got his information and he's willing to come as well.
I'll make a motion to, accept the resolution 2019 without a number after it.
With the change of number of,
With the change from 5 to 7.
the motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. All right, now we know it's 7 members, and I'll look for a motion to entertain the names that our Ponds Committee chairperson gave us for the additional 6 people.
I make a motion to accept, Mrs. Walsh's recommendation for the, committee members.
I would suggest that the motion
Name them, that's what I was
just for
thinking.
clarity.
Okay, do you want me to name them? I gotta get back to that
Yeah, I
page.
got it, Richard.
Okay. I need to bless them.
Should be ready.
I'm sorry. Sally Baron Black, Bob Gepper, Judy Peak, Jim Kuziniski, Tom George, Connie Hildebrand.
Chairman.
And Chairman Flavia Walsh. I'm sorry.
Second the motion.
Okay, the motion and a second, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
4 to 1. All right, and I don't think there's anything else that we need to do with this, is that correct, Tony?
That's correct.
All right,
And I'll correct the resolution and just be sure to take care.
okay. So that leaves us with, consideration of the 2020 fiscal year annual meeting schedule. Anybody see anything on there they wanted to change or concern
January
about?
2nd. January 2nd. I will put it in here. We can't, I know, I just.
I'll be here. I was gonna look and see when Thanksgiving was this year. That's the only one.
Page 32.
28, okay, yeah, I'm good.
What are we changing?
We're not changing anything, I was just looking to see when Thanksgiving was, to see how close that second meeting was. Okay,
Can I just tell you that there's a between January 16th and February 6th, that's like a 3-week break, just in case you wanted.
There are always 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah, there's a couple of
Okay,
reasons.
all right, I just was looking.
Motion approved.
All right,
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the meeting schedule for next year. All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
The residents
Okay,
gathered
that
in the meetings
passes 5-0.
participate.
And since we've got one thing on the consent agenda item, that's minutes from August 1st. Anybody have anything on there they'd like to change.
Motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of August first. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes. And since we have Mr. Banks on the phone, I'll start with him for supervisor comments.
Nothing for me today, thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Flaherty?
We had all workshops on our budget, so we couldn't make any motions on it. Are we gonna do that at the public hearing?
I'm sorry, the question was the workshop.
It was a deal about the workshop.
Workshops,
Trying to
yeah.
set a workshop for the, our rules and stuff.
No, there was.
This is strictly on the budget.
Budget.
Wanting
We
to
only
make
had budget
changes.
workshops, so there was no motions made.
Correct.
Okay, so we make motions at the public hearing?
Correct, and that's what we're gonna be asked to be continued.
Okay, that's what I needed to know. I did call Chris and asked him to.
Yes, and procedural perspective, what I would recommend and suggest is that when we recess this meeting, or when we go over there for that meeting, that the board would announce that we're planning on continuing to the date we've all talked about, and we'll get that date pinned down, Stephen, and Chris, and that the board, if anybody wants to, they can make comment and discuss it. The board won't take any action or anything, but it's merely if the people want to, and if the people can't come back at a later date,
Right.
that we would have verbatim transcript, I would suggest, of their comments.
So it could act as a substitute for those who cannot make it.
Not a substitute, but if they're not able to, they'll become part of the record.
It becomes a part of the record.
Yes, I think that's an appropriate process to utilize.
So when are we going to extend the public hearing to?
Stephen, I was in my car when we spoke. Do you have all those dates that we requested? Well, this is a discussion now, only when any action will be taken when we get over
Okay.
it.
When's our September meetings?
Well, we recommend.
There's time-sensitive issues here.
Yeah, in order to fit the statutory notice requirements, my recommendation was September 10th or 11th. Stephen likes September 12th better. And have the September 12th also
A special
qualify
meeting.
as your general, move your general meeting, your first meeting in September to make it September 10th, 11th, or 12th, as opposed to September 5th.
So we're moving preferably 5th to the 12th and the 19th to the 26th?
My preference would be 5th to the 10th. That's part of the conversation, only because of the timeframes to get it to the property appraiser's office unless Stephen's comfortable with it.
Well, yeah, but see, my comfort level with Tony was really not so much that part of it, was the top half part, getting the notices out.
Yeah.
That was really why I was pushing it a
So,
little
so
back.
Stephen, you're comfortable that your shop can, if the board makes changes to the role,
Yes.
if we have a hearing on September 12th, that you can make those adjustments and changes in sufficient time to get to the property appraiser by September 15th is the statutory deadline.
That's correct, because we have control over that, whereas we have less control over getting these notices printed.
So September 12th is the day we're thinking about, because then what happens is there's two, actually a couple of advertising dates. One is, board needs to send out an amended notice to the individuals, the letters, of the public hearing and their assessments. And that has to be at least 20 days before September 12th. Additionally, that big notice in the paper, with the map and the columns, that has to be at least 20 days beforehand. And then there has to be a publication published twice.
Well, we had to do that
Budget
anyway.
hearing.
We had to do that anyway.
Right, but the publication wasn't published twice, that was the issue.
And you can't do one, the old one is one.
I would not do that, no,
Have to have two new ones.
because that was advertised for today, that's the problem.
So what is the date in September we talked?
September 12th.
And that gives you enough time.
That gives us that's it. I mean, really, the 15th is the statutory deadline for the tax roll to go in, so
The
that's.
15th is a Saturday.
Right, so we would have to turn it on the 13th, so the 12th is it.
You can't go to the 16th?
No.
Monday,
No.
Nope.
the first working day?
No,
No.
already checked, already confirmed, already.
The statute says September 15th.
That's
And,
the whole
and
thing.
once again, one of the reasons for then you head back out of it, you go, because of the requirement of amending the mail notice to go out, and for the paper, and I don't know if you had conversations with the paper yet, Stephen, because they're the ones that messed it up.
we've started to, yeah, but that's just it, again, it gives them a couple extra days, and that's really just the back end is the best, just to give all these other vendors an opportunity to make sure that they can get it done on time.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask another question, Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
Okay. What time would the public hearing be?
It can be at the same time as we had
Okay,
scheduled.
I have a conflict that day. Okay, if we have it at the same time, if we do it a different day, that would alleviate the conflict. If we can keep our meeting on the 5th and just do the public hearing, change the time a little bit.
Once again, that's up to the board as to what time on, assuming it would be the 12th, the board can set the time.
You gotta do it at 6 o'clock. The public's gotta be there.
So if we can do it a different
They
time.
we can have the public here, we can hear from them today, and they don't have to come back.
Well, I don't want to say it that way, Mr. Guy. I would suggest
Well,
that.
I don't care what you want.
No, from a legal perspective, I would suggest the predicate for that be that if you are here and you are unable to attend at a later date, whatever happens between now and then, I'm not comfortable with saying you can make your comments study, don't worry about showing up. It's that you can make your comments study, if you're not able to show up, we will include those as part of the record.
The problem with the 5th is the 20 days in advance.
Absolutely.
You're cutting it,
No,
you're cutting it exact.
you can't do that, yeah,
But could we have our regular meeting on the 5th and just do the public hearing?
On the 12th.
Right, so that way we don't have to worry so much about doubling.
So in other
Making
words, all
sure-
you're saying is that avoids her having a longer day. Just have it at 6 o'clock on the 12th, so we have a meeting on the 5th and
And then I
12th,
can just leave to where I have to go, but I
Yeah.
don't have, I
The
can
board-
get stuff done before that.
If the
Okay.
board wants to set the budget hearing and the assessment adoption hearing as the only item for September 12th at 6 p.m., that's appropriate, and keep your September 5th date, yes.
That's what
That
I'm.
makes sense to me.
Thank you.
So we're gonna go 5, 12, 19. So, yeah.
You hear that, Doug?
I do, yeah.
Okay. Mr. Guy, supervisor comment.
All I have is I want to wish Mike
I
a
was
bon
gonna
voyage
bring that
and
up.
a good time in his new endeavor, and thanks for all the hard work you did for us.
Thank you. What?
Michael Kraft has turned in his resignation. His last day is next Wednesday, so we're gonna miss him.
First I heard about it. I agree.
Is that allowed?
Get the chain out.
The last paycheck's being withheld, it's okay, that'll get him back.
Unfortunately, Sanibel Island lured him away, Mr. Tinkle.
Sanibel Island
Water Association.
Water Association.
Yeah, they run their own RO system out there for all the residents.
Are they giving you a free sunpass for town?
You hope so. Yeah, there goes $6 a day if you're back, your deal toward the bridge.
And I'm just gonna piggyback on Mr. Guy. That was what I was gonna bring up. So, Mr. Tinkle?
Just two things. One, where are we on getting the, dollar value from the littoral people for maintenance of littorals for the ponds?
We did the bid out for Hampton Park. I have that dollar figure. We haven't done it district-wide.
I'd like to do that, get that going as quick as possible in the district-wide. And then this letter that was dropped to us, this warning letter from DEP, is that as a result of us telling them what happened?
It basically is, and under Governor DeSantis, this has taken a whole new priority in type of sanitary sewer overflows. They even introduced a bill in the legislature to charge utilities $1 a gallon for any spillage. Most of this is coming from the larger utilities in certain areas, but what they want is just more information. They want you to come in and demonstrate what you're doing to alleviate it. And of course, our rebuilding of pump stations and buying portable pumps and generators and rehabbing, and of course what happened there, they want an explanation. Well, we show them that piece of thin metal, we're gonna bring it right in, and we have a meeting scheduled with them next week. But that is from a statewide effort. It's certainly not directed just at us.
Okay, that's all I have.
Madam Chair, I just have one item that Chris and I talked about today. It came up recently. I think we made an inquiry about Commerce Lakes Drive and streetlights.
Yeah.
In reviewing, we had a nice conversation with Sean Ellis, who represents the condominium association where the brewery is located. And one thing that, in re-looking at the plat for Commerce Lakes Drive, first of all, the district owns the first segment. There might be 4 or 5 streetlights in that right of way, which are owned by FPL. But, interestingly enough, looking again at the plat for Worthington Commerce Park, going all the way over to Andrews Parkway, there's an easement to the CDD for streetlights within the road right of way track. And so if the board's of the mindset, we could bring it back at a later date to operate those lights. The board has the ability to do that because they are FPL owned. So if the board wants to say, okay, we can operate streetlights, we have that ability, and for the public health, safety, and welfare.
So they just
we
send
would
us
take
the
care
bill.
of it. That's one discussion point. If that's what the board is so inclined, or we can still wrap it up in the whole package.
Are they, the way they talked in that letter is they were going to take the lights down, remove them. And my deal is why?
I find it hard to believe.
I do too. Why would you go and remove the light? That was the inference I got. Otherwise, it just looked like to me they were fishing as to who's gonna pay the bill.
Basically, the bill's $452 a month. It has been, and I requested, and they're sending us a standard service contract for.
To me, and I've argued this all along, these 3 or 4 streets where the POA